Hi guys, it's Blackie. Okay, in our next installment of the axe files. In the first three, we talked about different kinds of axes and their jobs. Now let's talk about axes and jobs and edges. Okay? What is the job of the axe that you're carrying and why are you carrying it? Okay? If all I'm doing is basic camp craft where I'm just chopping a little firewood, delimbing a little bit of this and doing a little bit of that, a standard edge will be more than sufficient for you. I mean standard edge, and I'll get to that in a minute. I see there's three kinds of edges. There's a fine edge, a standard edge, and a robust edge. Let's take those for a second. A fine edge is a very sharp axe. The edge is thinner and it's been made very sharp, almost shaving sharp. With a good hard edge axe, you can get it shaving sharp. Those are the ones you see the guys doing the demonstration and they're shaving, etc. That axe is useful for felling, okay? That means chopping down trees, because that fine edge bites extremely deep for the power and the depth. So I'm chopping this log, this tree. I want to hit upstroke, hit downstroke, hit upstroke, hit downstroke. And every time I'm cutting the fibers at the top, cutting the fibers at the bottom, and this section pops out as I relieve the pressure. Like a rubber band, they pop out. And a good sharp, good heavy axe will fell a tree quickly with the least amount of effort because it bites the deepest. Okay? I need to cut limbs off very cleanly because I want to use this log for something else. Then I want a fine edge because when I hit it, I want it to slice it off, pop, smooth when it goes by. Okay? Disadvantage to this edge. It's very unforgiving. You have to strike on proper angles. If you're off on your strike, instead of hitting dead on, you're kind of canted just a little bit, or you do a little like that on impact, you're going to roll that edge. It has to hit dead on and slice straight in. Any left or right torque makes that edge want to bend because it's thin. It's sacrificing structural integrity for depth penetration, okay? And so with that fine edge, I can cut very cleanly, very deeply. It is fragile. Other disadvantage, it is no good really for splitting wood because when I hit that log dead on, it slices deeply down into the fibers. It doesn't push the fibers apart very well. So when it slides in there like a sword in a stone, it wants to get stuck. And now you got to rock it back out of there. It doesn't almost like hydraulically force by mechanical thickness, force the wood apart so it tears like tearing a phone book in half. It slices into it and it just stops. So it's not a good splitting axe. It's a cutting axe. It's a fine edge axe. Okay? Now let's go to the other end, the robust edge. The robust edge is a little blunter. It's not as sharp. It's a little more blunt. What is that good for? That's for grubbing. That's for cutting things where I might hit a nail. I might have something really hard in here that's going to cause problems with that fine edge. It's a general purpose edge, sometimes called a grubbing edge or a splitting edge. Because now when it hits, it's got enough edge that when I'm talking about an edge, it'll cut paper. It won't like a razor, but it'll cut paper. But when it hits and it forces, because it's thicker, it forces that wood apart, and that causes that tear to go deeper into the wood with every stroke. And I split wood better with it. So the robust edge is your splitting edge. It's also the edge that I use for cutting roots, things like that. Remember my double bit axe? One edge has a fine edge. The other edge has a robust edge, and therefore I can cut roots with it and not worry about destroying my axe, because if I hit a little rock, it'll be okay. I've got a lot more to work with right there, okay? Between these two is a standard edge, I call it. It is sharp enough that if you bear down and push, it might take a little bit of hair, but it's not a true razor edge. And yet it's not so fine that if I'm trying to split wood with it, it's not going to sink in deeply and get stuck. Now, if you'll do a search like I did several years ago, the U.S. Forest Service put out an in-depth how to sharpen an axe video where they show you how to make a little gauge that slides down onto it. They give you a template. You can cut it out of metal or something and put it up there to tell the exact edge, and that's how they sharpen their axes for use in the national forests, where you're 2 days out on a horse and cutting trails and things like that. There ain't no, just run back to the car and grab the grinder. You've got to have an axe you can sharpen in the field. Which do I prefer of the edges? Generally, I carry a standard edge. Why? Because I'm a little of both sides on this. A standard edge, if I hit very precisely and put a good whip to it, it will cut cleanly. So if I'm felling a tree, it will not do it as fast as a fine edge, but it will do the job fairly well. And yet, I'm splitting camp wood, and usually I'm putting a log sideways and standing this piece up and hitting it or whatever, trying to split camp wood with it. So it's got to be able to split a little. See, it's not as good as a dedicated splitting axe, but it does a jack of all trades. Okay, so what is the job you're asking the axe to do? If it's a general camp axe, a standard edge is fine. If this is an axe that I'm going to be doing crafting with, like this size axe, let's say I'm going to be doing spoon carving, or I'm going to make bows, or I'm going to be doing something else where I'm going to use an axe to hog off the bulk wood, then I would put a fine edge on this axe, a nice thin fine edge, so that it would slice those fibers, and it's almost effortless just to let the weight of the axe hit it and just bite in and bring out the pieces. It's not going to be splitting anything, it's just going to be hogging off those pieces. A fine edge would be for that. What if I'm going to use this same axe, but I'm going to use it as a kindling axe? It's basically a throw with a handle. Then I want that robust edge, very similar to the edge that comes on axes. What I would call the edge that comes on almost all the axes that I've seen, American-made axes, and most of the Chinese ones, come with a robust edge on it. They're not that sharp. They don't want them that sharp hanging on the rack in the department store or the hardware store, feared that somebody's going to cut themselves. It is just too easy for somebody to take a razor sharp axe and do like that and cut the bone. Because big mass momentum, we've talked about that. And so they're not going to sharpen them that much. So usually the edge that comes on an axe is a robust edge. When you sharpen it and get it a little bit sharper, you've made a standard edge. And when you take it all the way, where that thing will slice paper like a razor blade, you've got a fine edge. And therefore, you're there. Can I take one from one way to the other? Yes, but you're taking off a lot of metal. When I sharpen an axe from the robust edge and take it all the way to the fine edge, I'm going to take off a lot of metal. I'm going to bring my taper way back. Now, let's talk about taper for a split second. And I hope you can see this. You have this first line of shiny right here. And then halfway, right here at my fingertip, is a second bevel that's going in. Okay, the depth from that to that. This is a robust edge, which is about, I'd say, 1/4 inch wide. If I wanted to make this into a fine edge, I would come all the way back here, and I'd have maybe 3/8 of edge, bevel it all the way from there to there. It would be a very thin edge, very sharp edge, but very fragile. So this edge right here, we will call a standard edge, because I have sharpened it somewhat. I brought the edge up to a better where it will slice paper. Not as clean as a razor, but it will slice paper. And this edge right here has been sharpened enough to make it a standard edge. Now, axe. Tomahawk. What's the job? It's going to be a standard camp tool. I'm going to be doing a little bit of lemon. I'm going to be making some tent stakes. I'm going to split a little camp wood. So, standard edge sounds good. Too light for a splitting axe, ain't it? Yeah, so there's no sense in even going for a robust edge. So notice that on this one, I think you can see better right here, my edge starts there and goes up. It's got a secondary bevel right there, but I've got fully a ½ inch of edge that's been sharpened, and that last ¼ inch has been really sharpened. This thing will shave hair. This one's a fine edge. Why did I put a fine edge on it? Because what I was doing with it. I'm using this as a general camp tool, but I've got a lot of experience. This is not going to be used as a grubbing tool. This is going to be used as a limbing tool. This is going to be used for me because how thin that head is right there. It's not going to be a good splitter, is it? Nope. But I bet I can take a piece of hardwood and make a pair of wedges and take that pole in the back, and I can bust a big old stump up with it in just a few minutes, because I can use it as a tool, as a hammer to pound in wedges. I don't have to bit that bit. I can start the bit cut and start my split, put my wedge in and tap the wedge in, and then turn this around and just use it as a hammer and pound in and split whatever I want. So it's a light camp general purpose axe. I put a fine edge on it. I know it's got a fine edge. And so I've got to be very cognizant of that when I utilize this in the field. I wanted it to cleanly limb, because what I was doing with this at the time I got this, I was making walking sticks for friends of mine. And I wanted to take those limbs off close and flush to the body as I could, so I didn't have to come back later and do a lot of hand work. And this did the job very well. Also was really light, and it hooked up beside the pack and didn't weigh hardly anything on it. So long-term carrying, I didn't notice it that much. So, in conclusion, everyone has an idea of what kind of job they want their axe to do. If you're starting out, if you don't have a lot of experience, start with the standard factory edge that comes on it. That's a robust edge. And go ahead and just sharpen it up where it will cut paper. That's it. Just have it where it will, you do like that and just to kind of roll the edge and it will slice paper. You're close enough. Now use it as a general camp tool. When you get good, you aren't missing a lot, you're not, twisting it or whatever, and the edge seems to be doing good, and you want to step up, sharpen it a little bit more. Now you want it to be able to take and just run way down on it like a piece of newspaper, and just no problem. It never bunches up or nothing, it just slices it like a razor. Try that out. You're going to mess up. It's okay. What is fail? First attempt in learning. You're going to fail. I failed. What's the difference between an expert and a beginner? The experts failed more times than the beginners ever tried. I've screwed up some axes. I'll admit it. I did it. I wanted a razor sharp axe because I thought that'd be the way to go, and then I sunk it in a stump trying to use it for a splitting axe, and I had to beat it out. Every time I'd bust it into a piece of wood, I had to beat it out. Didn't understand why. Then somebody explained it to me. Axe is too sharp. You need a dull axe for that. It started making sense. I'm just trying to pass on a little bit of my experience to you. Hope this gives you some ideas, guys. Please leave some questions or comments down there, and if there's anything else you want me to cover, there's going to be some more in this axe series. I ain't done yet. We're going to cover some more about axes. Till next time, I'm Blackie wishing you safe journeys. Have a great day, guys.